helps the most is normally yourself. As long as the only exception to this is you just want to be careful that you don't overshare or share in areas that you're not quite ready to do that, because we've had when you open up, as soon as you do that, you have kind of like an attack of
oh no.
Yeah, oh no, what did I just say? You know, where am I at? And that's part of the growing up process. But because we have to do that, we all have to learn how to do that. I had to learn to do it. The first time I spoke, my knees were knocking, and all I was doing was making an announcement. Okay, all right. So I'm telling you, and so I'm always encouraged when people are willing to do this, because they say that the two biggest fears in life is what? Public speaking and death.
Oh.
That's right. And most people would rather die than speak. That's what they said.
I had a speech class, and the professor, this girl froze, and he made her stand there for like 15 minutes. She was just frozen.
Well, that's not the way I operate. I don't think that's going too good. That's quite a guitar there, Jimmy.
It sure is, Jimmy.
So anyway, that's what we'll be doing. So welcome, internet folks. Willie started this a while ago, which I told him to, and so welcome internet, and welcome everybody here.
Thank you.
And thank you. And we're going to be talking about confession tonight. All right. Tommy picked the topic. It's out of our Life Recovery Bible and Workbook. And he'll be doing the step 4 out of confession, out of Nehemiah 9, 1 through 3. Now, last week we were in Nehemiah, but we were a little later in the chapter. And so we picked this one. Maybe we did a little bit out of order, but it really don't matter, you know. So anyway, we're going to be talking about confession. And my focus, not only with confession, but for some reason I thought moral inventory fit with it, and it's in the lesson that Tommy's going to be sharing, and really I think it goes together well, and I want to emphasize that. So Tommy's going to be doing that. Garth is going to be doing the reflection, and of course I've got down here Doug time, but my time's usually in the time of everybody else's, so, right? So, and right now, right? So,
Doug time.
all right. So, and we're not going to have music tonight, so we may have a few extra minutes, but we usually don't have problems with that, right? So, all right. Now, so we're going to start off here with what does confession mean? Okay, what's the meaning of confession? Anyone?
To share something that was not a good thing. I mean, I like if somebody made a mistake, to kind of confessing. So sharing it with to folks who maybe have never heard it, because otherwise I don't think it'd be a confession.
All right.
Is that right?
All right.
For the
Garth, you just make me smile, you know. All right, Corey?
for a healing purpose, or the confessions that I would know about would be for a positive outcome out of it.
Okay.
The recovery confession.
All right. Anybody else? Is it warm in here, or am I just warm?
Just a little warm.
I turned the air conditioner on, but I didn't turn it down. Probably it's humidity in here. Of course, Tommy, we don't want to steal all your thunder, right?
Oh, you're all right.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything to say before I read my definition that I prepared? Okay. Yes, yes, no, no. All right. So confession generally refers to the act of admitting or acknowledging, which is what both of you talked about in fashion. One, sin or fault. You know, a lot of people, some people have a problem with sin. That terminology is sin, but sin means falling short, missing the mark. Okay, right.
But is it just falling short, or is it an act of that we've done to, let's see, that causes us to fall short? I mean, you know, sometimes we just fall short, and I don't think that.
A willful act, is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, that would definitely, that would be missing the mark. Okay, if you willfully choose to go your own way, which is it's sin, willfully missing the mark or going your own way,
Okay.
which is what it talks about in the Old Testament about choosing to go in your own way, and that would be, and in fact, that would be missing the mark. Or what we're going to talk about here in a moment is this moral inventory, okay, and what moral means. What I'm going to talk about here in a moment. What do you think about that?
The term moral is always an interesting word to dissect.
Right.
Mhm.
It is, and I have multiple definitions that I'm going to be reading here that I got in different places. So maybe it will help. Okay. Good. Everybody good so far?
Great.
So back to my definition. Okay. One's sin or fault or missing the mark. How about that? Is that okay if I throw that in there? Especially in a religious context. This practice is based on belief that confessing sin or missing the mark leads to a spiritual healing. So we're seeing that a confession does something to affect us so that we can have some spiritual healing. Would you agree with that?
Yes, in part.
In part.
Yes, sir.
Help me understand what you mean.
Because, you know, I could see where somebody says, you know, it's like, I'm going to confess it so that, you know, I can go to heaven, and I'm just doing it to get it in the doors, not necessarily because I need healing, because I don't like him anyway, you know, something like that.
Okay. So, so it's just a ploy. That would be just a ploy then.
And he said false confession. That
False confession was good, and so do you think a false confession works?
If working is to heal the individual confessing, no.
Okay. And if it's something else?
It could be.
Well, who's this confession for, really? That, for the one that's making the confession. It's for your healing. So if it's, good word, I like it. If it's a false confession, then that means what the path that you're choosing to go down is not a path of healing. And
It's manipulation, I guess.
we're trying to deceive, which would be, I guess, a form of manipulation. But you know, manipulation is a form of witchcraft, also. How you like that? Those apples?
Well, you know.
I think a lot of times with step one, it could turn into a false confession to, say that I'm powerless and my life is unmanageable. I know there's times where I was willing to say anything to try to get help, but it wasn't until I actually meant the words that I was saying, I really need
I'm glad you brought that up, and I'd like to talk about that for a second, if you don't mind.
Perfect.
Okay, because some people may say that I don't think that was a false confession, what you just said, because you were attempting to do something to try to make a difference in your life, all right? And you didn't know what you were doing, but you went on and you were trying, okay? So that is your intention, which is actually faith, and faith in, I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to try, okay? I don't know what all I'm doing, but I need some help, so I'm starting down this journey or down this path. So I'm not negative there. A lot of people in the church world sometimes complain about people because going to the altar is a form of going down and praying and maybe praying a prayer of salvation or for salvation or forgiveness. And sometimes people, say, well, they only need to do that once. Well, in the fact that in a rigid, literal sense, yes, but the fact of it is, we're all process-oriented beings, okay? You understand what I mean? So sometimes we have to practice what we want till we get ourselves in alignment. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, in fact, I've heard a saying in AA or GA or whatever, fake it till you make it.
Which I don't agree with.
Well,
But I understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
But see, faking it, in my opinion, is a form of lying. But if I'm practicing I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to learn how to grow, and which is a nuance, okay? But some people,
take it literally. Yeah, I think
that may sound a little hard when I said that, and I don't mean to be hard.
I think the intent is the way you're trying to put it forward
Right.
from that
If you're doing
statement.
it to deceive somebody that you're something that you're not, or doing something that you're not, and expecting it one day to work out, now you've made it, is a little different than, hey, I'm not real sure what I'm doing, but I'm here trying.
Right.
And eventually down the road,
Right.
I'll be able to do it.
And see, that's an intention, and that intention is, and that's another word, as far as I'm concerned, is faith. And faith pleases God, according to the scriptures. Okay.
That's like the person who confesses that their life is unmanageable and they surrender, even if they don't really believe it at the time, or they do believe it at the time, but not deep in their, in their subconscious.
Well, the fact of it is, none of us is where we want to be. We're just better than we were. Okay, and that's because of that process of coming to, the 12-step talks about having a enlightened experience, awareness. Okay, I can't even remember.
Spiritual awakening.
Spiritual awakening. Yes, and so, but the fact of it is, we don't have just one spiritual awakening. We can have a spiritual awakening in step 1 and step 2. In fact, if you're learning, you are having a spiritual awakening. Maybe it's not the one that we kind of talk about in step 12, but the fact of it is, that's where you begin to see things. Your eyes are open. You have some enlightenment. You're more awake in areas that you had turned off your awareness in, and so you're seeing it. So there are, in my opinion, multiple awakenings. Okay, and probably way more than we could even imagine, in my opinion. You going to say something, Robert?
No.
Okay.
I'm just
Am I doing okay?
agreeing.
Do I?
I'm just agreeing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I like it when smart people agree with me.
Oh, well, but what about him? You're right.
Bam. Okay. So I haven't got through this confession. So we're talking about spiritual healing and reconciliation. Okay, we're talking about, and that's some of what Corey's talking about, is being reconciled. And that's kind of we look at it as a accounting term, and that is that this place is the way where I want to be, and I'm over here, and so I work on things to get them reconciled. Right?
Balance is
Balance the books, right?
Yeah.
And the way we balance the books, spiritually speaking, is through the shed blood of Jesus and His grace, because we're saved by grace through faith. Okay, we're not saved by faith; we're saved by grace through faith. Faith is the tool that helps us to make that connection. That's when we say, "Yes, I'm going to take a shot at it." Okay, all right. So, reconcile with God and the community, okay? So not only we want to be right with ourselves, we want to be right with God, we want to be right with others. And that's when we have been would it be all right if I say this? If we've been a big screw up for a long time in our life, we have sabotaged, we burned a lot of bridges, we've negatively affected our life and those around us, right? But I am a believer that if we change, if we change, and I'm talking about a positive change, but if you have a negative change, either way you change, you affect everybody around you. So when you were messing up, making unhealthy choices, you affected everybody around you. So when we start to change those choices and make healthier ones, right? Healthier ones. Hello, healthier ones.
Healthier ones?
Healthier ones. Then that means we're doing it not necessarily try to manipulate others, but because we're looking for recovery, all right? We're looking for internal recovery so that we make healthier choices. And when we change, again, then we affect people around us. That doesn't mean that we make them different, but we affect them and they have a choice how they're going to respond, right?
Affect the way they think of us.
How they think of us, how they treat us, okay? And you know, the biggest problem is not always how other people think of us, it's how we think of ourselves. Hi, Jeff.
Hey,
Glad you came in.
I mixed up, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We're going to punish you by making you move up here.
Okay.
It's good to see you.
All right. And of course, I was just kidding about punishment.
That's all right.
Very good.
We'll see.
All right. So we're talking about confession tonight, and I was going through a definition of confession. And so step 4, which we'll be reading here in a little bit, we'll be reading all the steps, is we've made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And so another definition of we're going to go to moral. A definition of moral is did anybody want to give me their definition of moral?
Of what?
Moral.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
living the right way and living by God's law.
Okay. All right. Good. Anybody else?
Inner beliefs.
Inner beliefs. You need to. Okay, because most of us have been living by inner beliefs, and a lot of those beliefs didn't get us into good places.
But does all morals have to be good?
No, they're bad morals.
Are there, like,
Is that
Is it bad morals or lack of good
Well, probably closer to lack of good ones. Thank you, Corey.
things that are pleasing to God? Or
But we can even leave God out of this moral statement because a lot of society, they say that they're focused on moral type approaches. Now, they don't think it's lined up. They don't think it came from God, but it's just because they chose not to accept that, in my opinion, because that's the further you go back, the more you see of that. So you wanted to add some. Oh, you didn't get. I didn't get done torturing you, Matt. So you want to add something to that?
Is that like kind of like inner standards, like the way you were raised? You know, like I'll only go this far because this is bad,
Okay.
or you know.
Okay.
I mean, I knew it when I was young. I knew it was wrong.
All right.
I didn't change my behavior, but you know. like
Yes.
inside,
Yes. And I'm going to ask that question here in a minute. So
I knew it
good
was-
deal. That.
wasn't right.
All right. So we don't. Won't we just ask that question now? Don't we all? Haven't we always had that internal knowing what's right and what's wrong, even though we may have convinced ourselves to do what was wrong? we rationalize it, made exceptions for it. You know, said, well, I'll run the risk. They can't catch me, right? My car's faster than theirs. Just throw that in there. That was for you, Will. And so,
And I think the way I would not define morals, but kind of, I guess, demonstrate it is the opposite of it is kind of a socially offensive act. You know, and
Yes,
so that's
yes.
kind of how I see it. You know.
that's good. And the fact of it is part of our, how we, well, in the definitions here, it talks about the basic moral values of community, okay? And of course, the community could be a gangster community, okay, all right? And so, but the fact of it is, that would be when I was talking about a while ago, you know, less morals, well, you know, and the fact of it is, they can be very loyal in one way, but also very destructive to people that are not in their circle or their clan. You know what I mean? Hello?
And morals change, you know.
Society morals change, yes.
Okay. But a moral doesn't change, but society morals change.
Depends on what the moral is based on.
Godly morals don't change.
Do what?
Godly morals don't change.
Godly morals don't change, okay?
Morals change all the time.
But we're not going to, actually what we want to focus on tonight here is just, well, let me read this definition here. So, some common synonyms of moral are ethics, okay? Noble, okay, what's noble, what's not noble, okay? Righteous, okay? Righteous, in a non-religious term, we see things as righteous or unrighteous, do we not? All right? In a spiritual term, righteous means right standing with God, okay? Righteousness. And virtuous, okay? When we look at people with virtue, then we see that as a higher place in that moral aspect. Now, the fact of it is, not everybody is everywhere all the time, and I'm talking about in this moral hierarchy. How about that? Let's go on. While all of these words mean conforming, I had never thought of that before, but when I read this, conforming to what? To this higher thought of morality, of ethics, noble, righteous, virtue, right? To the standard of what's right or wrong. When Matthew was talking about it a while ago, I always knew what was right and what was wrong. Okay? Now we may not even know why, right? But we knew basically that what was right and what was wrong. Is that not correct?
Like a gut feeling.
Yeah. And I believe that's because of some of God's Spirit that's in all of us. Okay? Because He said He was there to lead us and guide us into all truth. Trouble is, we don't listen. Yes, Robert.
The first thing that comes to my mind when I hear the word moral
Okay.
is Aesop's fables.
Mm-hmm.
Because you hear the story and then at the end it says the moral of this story, meaning a lesson that should be learned from that. So it kind of gives me the thought that morals are lessons that we learn in our life to help us live a better life, kind of.
And could we use another word in there? It's patterns and principles to help us live that better life.
Okay.
Okay. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah, because lessons is, you know, I was kind of having a little issue with lessons, you know, just because, you know.
It can go both ways, a lesson. A lesson can go both ways.
Yeah, you know, and it's kind of like you're learning the morals, but I'm thinking a moral is already there. You know,
which it is,
Mhm.
but oftentimes we, most of us live, whether we realize it or not, we live out our story that we tell ourselves. We're telling ourselves a story. Now, some of it's a real sad story we tell ourselves, and we live our story. What does that mean? Well, when you get new information, and if you have an opportunity that you can change your story, which we all can, and that's what we're trying to do here in recovery, is basically say, you can have a better life, all right? And these are some things that that will help you to have a better life, and then these are some things that you need to stop doing to have a worse life. Would you agree with that? Okay, and then you listen to that part of your inner spirit or consciousness or conscience, and to help you to walk in that path. Because when you come up to that place, depends on how well, there's one scripture talks about we sear our conscience with a hot iron. That, in other words, we build up calluses to it that we stop being able to hear. But but your attempt here today is to try to clear some of that up so that you can hear easier, and you have an opportunity to make that choice, and that's what we're working on, so that we can have a better life. Would you agree with that?
great to plan
Okay.
on.
All right. I didn't mean to take so long, but we didn't have music, so right. Morals imply conformity to the established, sanctioned code of accepted notions of right and wrong. The base moral value of that community, which we talked about earlier. Morals accept moral. I'm going to skip that one. We're going to go down to moral inventory. Well, let me ask the question here. I think I already have. Do we not already know right from wrong? We've already talked about that, right? You realize that you knew that, right? You see where you overrid or have overridden your moral signal saying, don't do that. And then you had some sort of reasoning behind why you decided to do that. How did that work out for us?
Not good.
Okay. And so, how about anybody would like to say why they went on and did it anyway?
It was
Corey?
morally acceptable in the environment that I was living in.
Okay. The peer group helped shift your behavior.
Well, so I'm having a hard time with this because, like, if you're raised in an environment like the Klan or something, like you said, the gangster community,
Uh-huh.
then, I mean, you could have, you said something that went against that wasn't socially acceptable, and I mean, I can imagine there was things that, I could do what we would consider today the right thing, and it would still be socially unacceptable.
And that's very possible. But we're talking about being guided by what we already know. Even though and see, we have those problems all the time. One that popped in my mind, and I don't know why, is because when I was in high school, there was a big issue on what they called the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. And they stopped the draft when I was a senior in high school. I was about ready to graduate, and they stopped the draft. And so, but the big story was that the soldiers were ordered to eliminate, as best I remember the story, eliminate this village. And they killed women, children, everybody. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that because women and children and others were oftentimes a threat, because oftentimes they were they were booby trapped. Okay, they were carrying bombs. They'd explode themselves when they got close enough to the soldiers, or went into the care of the soldiers. So they are potentially a threat. But the thing of it is, the issue was they knew that it wasn't the right thing to do. But their excuse was, we were following orders, which is kind of like the moral, this is what we're supposed to be doing right now. And, and that was a big deal because it had always been pushed that you followed orders. But after that, things changed. And there's some discretion in those orders nowadays. You still may suffer some consequences for not following the orders, but the fact of it is, probably you wouldn't go to jail, which most of them did, including who gave the orders. Anybody familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes. Sort of, yes.
And it made a big impression on me. Okay, so the idea here is, the point was to these soldiers that were on the ground. Yes, there was a lot going on. It's tough stuff over there. You didn't know what was there. You had to be on high alert all the time. But there is still, they knew what they shouldn't do. And the reason why, I don't know for sure, but the reason why it was probably found out is because somebody confessed, turned it in. And because they couldn't live with themselves.
But they also knew that they were to follow the orders, strict orders, and not, so I could see where it'd be quite
But that was the big excuse that the Nazis used
Right.
Sure.
during the Holocaust.
And they still prosecuted, didn't they?
Yeah. And so the fact of it is, our conscience, though those internal morals, this went deeper than I had planned on, okay? But I think it's a very important message for us to understand. We know what's right and what's wrong, and you know when you violate them. And when you violate those, let me ask you a question for them. Is there not going to be consequences for it?
Yeah.
In one way or another, there's going to be consequences.
And if it's not from outside, it's from inside.
Bam. That's what I'm talking about. Right.
And I sometimes go against my morals, or have gone against my morals, because it's more exciting
Yeah.
to do this,
Yes,
than it is
yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's what you told yourself. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not true. But then you have to say, well, was it worth it? How did that work out for me long term?
And maybe I shouldn't be getting excitement from that,
Well, the thing of it is, oftentimes in those choices, that's a short-term game instead of a long-term game. Okay? Because after the short-term game is over, you go automatically into the long-term. And then you pay for all of that, one way or another. Isn't that true?
Yep.
Amen.
Now, I would be amiss if I didn't go ahead and cover this aspect of it, and that is that grace that I was talking about. We can't fix all of the past, but that's what confession here is here to help us with, and that is that you recognize what you did wrong and you confess that. Okay? And in that confession, which would lead into repentance, which means you turn from that. I've messed up. I've done something wrong. Okay? And because we can't fix everything. We'll go into the amends process when we get into step 9 and things like that, about making amends or getting ready to make amends, and then step 10 I think is making amends, and that is to help us to heal spiritually, and to, if possible, we affect the community that we negatively affected in the past. But the fact of it is, this confession is here to begin to help you to turn this, to recognize that you're making a change, and you can't fix all of the past. You may have to take responsibility for that past, and then, but you can let go of the guilt and the shame of that, and that's not necessarily easy. But this is the process of the healing that we're talking about.
And and if somebody is on trial and they clearly did something atrocious and they just sit there and keep denying it, the observers get just so angry. They want them to, and if they do confess, it just seems to have a tremendous effect on the observers. Like, oh,
Yeah, it does, and it does affect them, but it affects us more. Okay, and it does in many ways, in many layers. Okay, I heard so many comments. I listened a little bit of radio about O.J. Simpson, here since he died, and people talking about him and talking about how he was so there was no remorse. There was, and a lot of people were still hung up in that because they can't go on if there's, and a lot of people are that way. They can't go on if there's not any remorse. Well,
if we're gonna do the remorse check, we have to admit you're guilty, right?
that's absolutely true. And that's some of the stuff that Tommy's going to be talking about about the Israelites that went in to rebuild the city, and so of Jerusalem, or build the wall around the city. So now the next definition I have is about moral inventory. And moral inventory is and oftentimes in step 4, a lot of people have difficulty in that. But hear me out on this, and then I'll be quiet. Okay? Will that be all right?
Suppose.
Well, I
You
will
okay,
go-
Jeff? Are you sure? Moral inventory is essentially an exercise where you take an honest look at yourself to identify areas of improvement or wrongdoing that needs to be addressed. Right? We need to look at ourselves. All right? You can't tame it if you are not able to name it. We talked about that last week, right? You got to name it to tame it. And so we're looking at it, and we're looking at it from a moral perspective. What's right? What's wrong? Okay? And sometimes we don't want to look at what we did was wrong because we know it was wrong, and it causes us pain. But the moral inventory is more than that. Okay? Let's go to the second sentence here. It says, it's important to remember that a moral inventory isn't just about identifying the negative aspects of yourself, right? It's also about recognizing the positive elements, okay? So, fact of it is, the worst person in here isn't all bad, right? Okay, and when we were talking about, gangster morals, there were some good things about what they had there, but there also was some twisted things too, right? And so sometimes we use that as a rationalization, like, well, this is good, so that's going to offset all that. And does it really?
El Chapo provides great, a welfare net kind of for the communities that he hides in.
Right, yeah, he does, and which is basically a bribe. Okay.
Yes.
But and it's hard to really say, well, that's not right. But the fact of it is, we know it's there's some good things done there, but the core of that is the issue here, and again, we know And the rest of the problem is, there's a negative effect in that entire community. And there's a big ripple effect that can take place, and I don't even want to talk about all that. So, okay, why? Here's my last question. Are you ready? Chris, are you ready? All right. Why do people live surrounded with trash? Whether that's figurative trash or actual reality trash. They don't know any better? How many agree with that statement? They don't know any better. They don't have any choice. Now, are you talking about? Are they talking about we're talking about morals here. We're talking about psychologically living in trash and also physically living in trash. Why do people choose to live in trash? You're saying because they don't have any choice.
There's something in their mind that
I guess because they don't know any better to not to.
That don't know any better?
So what
Is that true?
they choose not to know any better.
Is that true? That they choose to not know any better?
So what if the choices you have in front of you are like, I don't know, some kind of a,
That's a good. I like this. Go ahead.
some kind of capital choice that you have, and both of them are negative, and what you're seeing is actually the rest of the two negatives, and being blinded to what the truth is because you got all this loudness coming in. What if you was boxed in with all these choices of negativity in your life, and you just, it's not that you couldn't do anything about it, but you didn't know you could do anything about it.
Your point I like is, and sometimes I tell people all the time, at least make the least bad choice that you can. Okay, you can't make the healthiest choice, but at least make the least bad. And that's what you're talking about there. But the trouble is that really what we do? Yes, Corey.
Can't really say why other people live in trash, but I lived in trash because I felt like I was trash.
Okay, all right.
Don't care.
That's why.
Don't care.
I have laziness because if you don't have to do any work around you, so it's like you can fit in the environment, not have to do anything with yourself.
Yes, yes. That's and we're talking. It seems like we're talking more about physical stuff, but I'm also talking about mental, emotional, spiritual stuff also, right? Okay, and living a particular lifestyle, that's destructive and negative and unhealthy, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Well, it's easier. It doesn't take any work to get. You can always get.
Well, if we break it down to personally, we all want to be accepted, so we find this is going to sound terrible. Potentially, we find the lowest level that we can be accepted from. Right? Isn't that true? That we find, because then we're accepted instead of working to rise ourselves up. Yeah, I don't believe that I can, or this is the way it's always been. I was raised this way, and so therefore this is my lot in life. This is the way I've always thought. This is the way I always felt. I believe in grudges. Okay, how many times have we heard that one? Right? Because I was raised that way. You cross me or my clan, look out. Right? We got to be careful.
Some hang with ugly, so they're not as ugly,
Well, we got to start somewhere, and that's what we got to start climbing the ladder. We got to work on it. One thing about recovery houses, they're there to help us to reorder our life, and most people don't like them. Why?
Don't like what? The house?
Recovery houses.
Okay.
Okay.
Why?
Because they're structured. Because they place demands on you that you, if you would have put those same demands on yourself, then you wouldn't the chances are you wouldn't be in the situation that you're in. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, sir.
Is that too hard? And I've worked with recovery houses and people in recovery houses and trying to figure out how to navigate through some of these things, and it's difficult because you take folks that have allowed disorder to run their life, and now they're having to trying to find order or structure, and there's a big part of themselves which we call flesh part, right? And or ego. You don't tell me what to do, right? And it's a challenge, but that's thank God for structures to help in this way. Either that or you go to jail. Now that's even more extreme structure, right? Right? And there may not be a lot, well, there's a lot of learning going on there, but it may not be all very healthy learning. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, definitely.
So, are you done with me?
Oh, 5 minutes ago, 2 minutes ago.
Okay, any comments before I sit down?
Thank you. No, I'm so sorry. No, I love you.
I went to a group one time that really changed my life. It was on standards, and it was about getting to a point where we let our standards match our situation, where you were kind of saying, look, this is my life now. There's no way I'll ever get out of this. And it's just kind of putting our standards down to there. Then we feel a sense of accomplishment there, like I'm living up to my standards,
Right.
even though they're terrible. And it was weird because I didn't realize that that's what I had done. And we talked about the goal in life is to set your standards and change your environment to match those. And it's real easy just to be like, oh, well, I guess this is what I get, or God hates me, or I deserve this. But really, I mean, I think the NA text says we want the rewards of hard work without putting in the labor. And so I didn't work hard to get anything, but I wanted it. And when I didn't get it, I said, well, this is where I'm at. And it really changed my life. Because then I sat down and had an honest conversation with myself about,
Good.
I'm no longer, it was about anything that you make a possibility, or, oh, well, I would like this to happen, chances are it's not going to. The other effect that wants to push me down, mainly myself, until I said I'm gonna, like, this is my standards, I'm not gonna accept anything different than, I'm not gonna accept sleeping on the concrete outside as a normal life anymore. Before it didn't bother me and it was okay if I did it, but until I really sat down and said, I'm no longer going to accept this as okay for me, that, and other people had accepted it okay for me. People didn't care that I slept outside in the rain, and that stinks, but it wasn't until I decided that's not how I was gonna live anymore.
Good.
And
Good.
I saw any change at all
Good.
in myself, so. That's it, that's what I got.
And that may have been a little tough, what I'm talking about in recovery houses, and again, I do say thank God for them. But one of the things that I learned many years ago in guys in recovery houses, they finally get in there, they start to do good, and they start pulling their lives together because they lost everything. Now they finally get a job, they do, and they even show up, because it's even hard to do that for a while, right? And then they oftentimes, they get a phone, and when a phone comes around, that's a big deal. People don't realize what that can, just what it does to you, mentally, emotionally.
It connects you.
It connects you, but it also can drag you away.
Mhm.
You have to learn how to you have to grow in emotional endurance to be able to manage that power and freedom, okay? Does that make sense? And then, they got a job, they're making a little bit of money. I had a guy come in my office one time and he says, I'm going to be getting this money, help me arrange this. And so we created a plan, what he needed to do. And he walked out the back door of the church over here, and I didn't see him for 6 months. So he had a plan, but when he got the money, it blew up on him, okay? And I'm not mad. I feel sorry, but, I tried to prepare, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. But you guys are further along than some of that I'm talking about here. But you have money, you have a car, okay, which is another power deal, and a girlfriend,
Hey.
okay, and then and if you haven't blown your life up yet, when you reach the girlfriend, because then she places demands on you, and you got demands on you, and things are going on, and you got financial things because now she may have relatives that you need to, and pay for, and money and stuff and influences. You understand what I'm saying? We have to be aware of that. Am I doing okay so far?
Yes.
All right. Yes. And it's hard. It's hard to be able to cope with these things. Like they say, it's simple. Anybody can do it, but that's not true. Okay. It's a process. And when you jump into these different, I'm going to call them levels, it can affect you. It affects your mind. It can kick up the obsessive compulsive behaviors, addictions, okay? And it can start to run your life again. And so
self-sabotage.
yeah, you stop showing up to work, you stop with money, then you have to medicate one way or another, and that's when your life starts spinning out of control, and before you know it, you lose the girlfriend, you lose the car, and maybe the phone.
I think they're
And then you phone.
positive reservations. Like when we list reservations in the step guide at the beginning, it's mainly bad things like, oh, if my grandma died, I would go back out or
Right.
whatever. But you don't really think about like, oh, I'm doing this because I really want to quit. And then I feel like there's positive reservations like, dang, I got all this stuff, now I'm good, and then now I'm just gonna go back out. And it was the things that we were gonna let take us back out. And I wasn't able to be successful until I did it like for God. And I quit doing drugs because it was pleasing to God, and it was like tearing apart my soul. So now,
Good.
when I get those things, I didn't do it to get those things. So when I get them, I'm not like, okay, well, I'm good, I got what I wanted, now I can go use it.
Right.
And I did that for many years where, oh man, I gotta quit, I gotta get a job. And then as soon as I got a job, what do I have to stay clean for? Or I don't have a reason to do right anymore because I got this.
And that's why I was trying to talk about morals and confession, because that helps us to turn that corner and be open so that we can allow some good stuff in and let go of some of the other stuff, right? Does that make sense? But what you're talking about is you shifted your moral perspective, in my opinion, and that's because you talked about, I'm going to live a different way, and what's right, and the fact of it is we should live in a way that allow ourselves to be proud of ourselves, that we are better. I'm doing better, and we continue to do that. And it's a process. And I said I was going to shut up.
10 minutes ago.
Thank you for that, Garth. So, Robert, come on down.
Go, Robert.
Robert!
Robert!
12 steps. And I like the statement underneath the heading, work the 12 steps and discover the path that will change your life, enrich your recovery, and bring you closer to the heart of God.
Good.
Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. Step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Step 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And again, we're studying tonight step 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
Thank you, Robert.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Tommy.
Beautiful day we're having.
It sure is.
Step 4, confession. Should I read Nehemiah?
You can do whatever you
I
want.
think I'm going to read Nehemiah. Because it doesn't really touch on it very much. Nehemiah 9, 1 through 3. On October 31st, the people assembled again, and this time they fasted and dressed in burlap and sprinkled dust on their heads. Those of Israelite descendants separated themselves from all foreigners as they confessed their own sins and the sins of their ancestors. They remained standing in place for 3 hours while the book of the law of the Lord their God was read aloud to them. Then for 3 more hours they confessed their sins and worshiped the Lord their God. It's quite a process.
I know I'm sure I talked about this last week, but the fact of it was they had been in exile for 1,000 years, okay, and that they hadn't been. They were aware. They were trying to live for God, but they didn't have the access to be able to have the knowledge of what the Scripture says, and so they were anxious to hear the Scriptures, and they set up a big platform where they read the Scriptures for 3 hours, and they Nehemiah, was it Nehemiah? I don't remember which it was reading. Hezekiah, no.
Was it Ezra?
Ezra, there you go, right. It was Ezra lined up people to help explain. And there was like 100,000 people there, okay? And so they heard information that they hadn't really heard before, maybe in their entire life. Does that make sense? And so then they realized how blessed their ancestors were, and how good they had it, and how they screwed up the whole mess. Okay? Even though they had all the blessings, they decided to go their own way, okay? And now they're stuck with a lot of the consequences. Does that make sense? And so that's what they're doing. They realize that, and that's what Tommy is talking about. They confess their own sins of the way that they've lived, okay, and their separation from God and what they were doing, but also they confessed the sins of their ancestors, and if, I'm going to go ahead and I want to throw this next part in there, and they said they bemoaned, they were grieved over what was going on. It touched them deeply, and so they were kind of stuck in grieving. And Ezra said that this is not a day for grieving. Basically, you've confessed it, you've grieved over it, accept it, and now let's celebrate that we are starting down a new path. Okay? So I wanted to hit that part where, when you've confessed it, when you've turned it around, you see, okay? You may not hit all the targets, but you're way better than you were, okay? You're starting down the right path. And now you need to celebrate, at least I've made a change. Okay, does that make sense? All right, go ahead, Tommy.
It says here, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. As we make our moral inventory, we will probably find ourselves listing our destructive habits, or our defects of character, the wrongs we have done, the consequences of wrong choices that we now live with, and the hurts we have caused others.
Not yet.
Okay. It's like sifting through all the garbage in our past. This is painful, but it is a necessary part of throwing away those rotten habits and behaviors that, if not dealt with, will almost certainly spoil the rest of our life.
Okay, now, what does that mean?
That if we don't confess it and deal with it in our life, that it's going to come back and bite us.
Any other comments?
Well, I looked up the word morals, and my definition says a lesson, especially one concerning what is right or prudent. So that really puts a whole different perspective on the 4 steps to me, because I just put down the things I did wrong. I didn't really want to learn from it. I just wanted to admit it. But looking at it now, I mean, my list is a lot shorter. I didn't learn a lot of lessons. I'm just kidding.
But, you know,
back at what I've done wrong, I can actually see how.
The fact of it is, the way that you're talking about it is the way that has been, particularly in the past, has been taught, but I think there's more clarity now in that, at least I hope so.
Definitely.
Do you have an opinion on that, Jeff?
I was just thinking about blaming others, never coming to the honest truth that I played a part in everything, and still continuing. If you had an ex-wife like mine, you drink too, blah blah blah, all the foolish things that I told myself to keep going, and if it wasn't to keep going, to staying resentful and hateful, jealous, all of it. So when I think about moral, I think about steps 1, 2, and 3: honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. 4, 5, 6: honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. 6, 7, 8: honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. That's the very first principles that I put, like the first steps, spiritual principle is honesty. The 4th step, spiritual principle is honesty. And then what is it? Step 7, honesty, and then step 10, honesty. I always, every time I think, I have to keep it really simple. So so when I'm reviewing steps, I think about honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, and I put that as the very first one. And actually, whenever you actually read the steps, you can see where the honesty is in 1, 4. I'm kind of mixed up right now. I'm going
It's
through
okay.
a lot, but I always keep it real simple with those 3 spiritual principles: of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness.
It's awesome. That's good.
And when I think about moral, I have a buddy of mine that talks about the internal guidance system, and he believes that we're born with it. He believes that we're born with it, and whenever I think about me falling off the balance beam, the reason I do is it's out of rebellion, my rebellious nature of wanting to rebel. Oh well, it'll happen. It'll happen to everybody else. It won't happen to me. I won't go to jail. I won't go to prison. But everything that I was thinking about whenever you were talking, it finally came out, and that's how cool it is. Is if you just sit and listen, it'll come out. You talked about the honesty part, and when I was sitting there thinking about it, how selfish I was, how dishonest I was, and when I think about moral, it's the pros and the cons. It's an honest look at, because all I ever seen was the bad. I'm prone to look at the negativity. I still do it. I want to break that chain, because it's a chain, and start looking at the positive.
Good.
I want to, with every negative thought, it can be combated with a positive one. I really, you don't know. I get all the way to the end of myself to where I get sick of myself, and there's a lot of times I know why I used. It's because it was an escape. I get all the way to the end of myself, and then I start getting angry, and I start getting resentful, and then I want to escape, and that's what I do. That's my pattern. So there's been many times I went to 12-step programs and got upset and stayed upset and wound up blowing it up. I'm tired of blowing it up.
Good. Well, all those things that we recognize, that those defects of character, or whatever you want to call them, well, I just instituted this into my life, and I'm sure you've heard me say it. That's what I did, but that's not who I am. Okay? Yeah, I did it. I can't lie about it. That's what I did, but that's not who I am, and that's not what I'm going to be. And we can learn to use those things to help us to turn it around, not to just punish us. That's what I'm trying to say right now. All right? And so, that was my question at that time. So, we're talking about what we're talking about, and they'll mention it later, but I got it written down here. We're trying to take out the trash of our life. Okay, we're trying to clean it up. Now, the fact of it is, life creates more trash. So that means we have to continually clean stuff up, right? Mentally, spiritually, in our heart, okay? In our relationships, in our life. We just need to keep cleaning that stuff up. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and so I think we'll go ahead.
The returned Jewish exiles confessed their own sins. The phrase speaks volumes. The idea of confession involves not only owning up to one's sin, but being truly sorry for them as well. Sins are offenses against God, including any transgression against His will. The natural follow-up to true confession, after owning up to our sins and bemoaning them before God, is to turn from them.
And bemoaning is that deep grieving that we were talking about, and or distress over a wrong. I recognize I've done something wrong, and I want to turn from it. And the fact of it is, even when Adam and Eve took of the fruit in the garden, and they took off and hid, okay, God went looking for them, right? He says, Adam, Adam, where are you? We know the story. And now God knew where they were, right? But he was trying to help them to reestablish relationship with him, right? So they needed to come to him so that he could help. And that's what this confession is about, is us coming to him so that he can help. So he'll help us take the trash out, right? That's what it's all about. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then if he's forgiven us, who do you think you are that you don't forgive yourself? Yeah, you may still have some consequences you got to clean up, but the fact of it is, you can let go of the guilt and the shame. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Right? Only if we can live it, right?
That's the hardest part.
Yeah, we can. It just takes willpower and determination.
I want to say this. Our willingness to beat ourselves up and torture ourselves emotionally or physically or psychologically is a sign that you're a good person.
Thank you.
Willie just looked at me. Well, shall I put some evidence behind that statement?
Yeah.
Okay? Because, see, you're wanting to be right. And you believe a lie. Okay? Remember what I said. You believe a lie about punishment's going to make you better. So you're punishing yourself to try to make you better, to pay for the wrongs that you've done, either emotionally or physically. Is that not correct? Mm-hmm. Right? Because you want to be acceptable. But you reject yourself, and you figure God's going to reject you too. But remember, he came looking for Adam and Eve, just like he looks for us. He knows where you are, but he says, come on in. Here you go. Let me help. Right? And so what we have to do is we have to be willing to not play God by punishing ourselves, to try to bring ourselves into right standing, to alter our unrighteousness by righteousness, because we can't do that. There's only one that can do that, right? Right? There's only one. Jesus. Okay? He already did it. He hung on the cross and said, it is finished. You want a scripture on that? 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins, confess. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and forgive us of our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Now, when he says all unrighteousness, what's left after all cleansing you of all unrighteousness? What's left?
Righteousness.
All you have is righteousness. Right standing with God. What's that righteousness mean? So, all we have to do is let him do his job and stop trying to do his job for him. Get it? Hello? Yes? I know that's hard. Why is that hard? Would you like me to answer that question?
Yeah.
That's a great question if you'd asked it. I don't answer questions people don't ask.
Why is it wrong?
Why is it hard?
Okay. Because, listen very carefully. Because we have practiced the wrong method so long, we turned it into a neural highway in our brain, and we think that that's the way it's got to be, is I will punish myself to make myself better. Because we were trained that, and everybody, they are trained this worldwide by the age of 5, according to research. And the fact of it is, it's a flawed method. Jesus taught a different one. It's called grace. Now, are you going to continue to play God and torture yourself, or you let God take care of the business that he came to take care of? It's hard. Why? Because we've always done it the other way. Right? So stop it. Okay? You want to go north, but you keep going south. Right? Because it's got to be the way I believe. It's got to be the way I was taught. Right? Does it really? Must it be?
Could it be the way that Jesus taught? I went to preaching, didn't I?
I was thinking that. That was good. That was good.
All right.
All right, you said it.
The Israelites' confession can serve as a model for us to follow as we take our moral inventory. We can list the occasions of our offenses, our destructive habits, and the consequences we have brought to our life and the lives of others. Then, after accounting for all the garbage, we can take out the trash. In their confessions,
Oh, wait a minute. Do we save it? Is it common operating procedure to save trash? We take it out, but do we go ahead and save it? I mean, is that what the expected pattern is? No.
They got a TV show, it's called Orders.
Orders,
I was gonna
right?
say orders.
Sure.
Yeah,
And how's that work out for those folks?
Boy.
Okay.
they're very attached to their things.
Isolate themselves.
Their world gets smaller and smaller because of their stuff, right?
Mhm.
And I've been in houses where it's just the path, and then sometimes they say you have to crawl over if you're going to go there.
I've
Okay,
never been in one, but boy,
I have.
it's sad.
Okay,
But there's no shame in it.
I would agree.
I think that people don't need to be shamed, I think they need to be loved.
I agree.
I agree.
Very nice,
I
very
agree.
nice.
There's an issue there that needs to be healed.
Like I don't want to let go.
It's like, Jeff, you need to quit using drugs, you need to quit using drugs, you need to quit using drugs, and it's like, how do I do that?
That's your
Oh, yeah.
that's your security.
Yeah.
That's their security net. That's your security net, and it's something that needs to be healed. Okay, and we all got stuff. Good point.
That's very nice.
I hoard stuff. I heard somebody say one time, if you have things and you haven't used them for a year, you need to get rid of them. I've got things.
I understand.
I haven't used in a year.
I understand. I understand. You know, it's part of that security aspect of things, and it's hard. Okay, and I resemble that remark. Okay, so go ahead.
In their confession, the Israelites owned, bemoaned, and then discarded their sins. After this, they were better able to make a new start.
Or read that the last sentence.
After this, they were better able to make a new start.
Something important. We do it three
Yeah.
times.
After this, they were better able to make a new start. We
I
can.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
No.
I like the owned, bemoaned, and what was the next word?
Owned, bemoaned, and then discarded.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know. I like that.
Took out the trash. After this, they were better able to make a new start. We can own the garbage in our own life by taking personal responsibility for our choices and actions. We can bemoan it by allowing ourselves to grieve. We can discard it by leaving it behind and turning towards the future.
Good.
I was thinking, gosh, they really, back in Nehemiah's time, they really had to go through quite the process to confess, and then you get through the whole process of it to get, towards repentance, And I was like so glad that we don't have to go through those things today. And we serve God, and we confess and repent, and it doesn't have to be shaving our heads and covering ourselves in ash and all kinds of different things that were done.
And that's what they were doing. They wore burlap, and they were sprinkling themselves with ashes
Yeah.
and all of that. So But, you know, those things can help us to come to that place, and we all have aids to help us come to that place. So what kind of takeaway did you get out of your lesson?
That confession is important for growing up as I grow up. It's something that I really need to look into because I had a little bit of confusion on it, but I think I'll be okay.
Anything else? What did you learn?
Confess.
Confess. Good. All right.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Garth.
And I sat on my glasses, and so I've never found that piece after I sat on it, so I don't know. So,
Sorry about that.
all right, so let's see, let me write it. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
What?
And hello, internet world. So the questions, you know, when I was going over them, I don't think, how do I say it? I think I need your all's help in order to kind of think about some of these. For instance, number 1, it said, what behaviors over my lifetime have been offensive to God? And I don't know. I mean, I don't think my thought is I haven't done anything that was offensive to God. It was not what God wanted me to do, but it wasn't offensive. And so, I have difficulties answering that question. So am I just being like a little too righteous? Or should I be seeing this a little differently? What would be something that would be offensive to God? Is it just that I don't, that I just did drugs? Correct?
I took advantage of women, and I think that would be pretty offensive to God. And I manipulated Christians, so that's something, I did that I feel like would be offensive to God.
And, I have a lot of, I've done a lot of wrong things, so I don't want to pretend that I haven't. But, like I haven't stolen from people. Like I can't say I really lied to the point where, it harmed someone, because I just feel so bad for them, I love people,
So you lied to him just to help him?
Well, the lies that I think can be appropriate at times is like, this make my butt look big, I got a haircut, how's it look? Oh, it looks great, right? But,
So you said you did things wrong, but not offensive to God. What does that mean?
well, certainly doing drugs, that does not advance me towards what I think God has in store for me. Now, what I did, I love my life. I own it because I think it really helped me,
Good.
right? But doing it, and like I wouldn't want to do it again. So, but doing it is not right. But I don't think it's offensive. I don't think God is like,
What's your definition?
of offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. I would say like
If it harms others, is it offensive to God?
and I think that's good. I want to say yes, but I don't want to just jump on it. Because if it I certainly don't want to harm others, but doing drugs does harm others.
Right.
Sure.
If it harms yourself, is that offensive to God?
Well,
Good question.
yeah, that's a good question. Yes. Okay, just remove him. No, yes, yes. However, when I'm seeing offensive, it's God understands, I think. And he's like, he knows me, he knows I'm weird, he knows I'm curious, he knows I'm going to do things, he knows that, it's going to kind of, lead to, like I'll try to, pull it all in and use for the better. But I don't think it's offensive. Like, when I think of offensive, I think of like, and I don't think he reacts quite like that, with me.
Would he have to be offended for it to be offensive?
Well, my first thought is, well, yeah, because, the similarity of the words. Would he have to be offended for it to be offensive? I'm going to stick with that. I have to think yes,
Are you offended by evil?
Well, I am offended by people who hurt others, who physically attack them for no reason. So, I was watching the news and somebody was, an lady was walking up the stairs and another guy kind of comes up the stairs, pushes her down, and, then starts going through the purse. Now, I think that's pretty offensive. But I couldn't do that. I just couldn't do it.
If somebody insults you, are you offended?
If somebody what?
Insults you?
Insults me? I would say not offended. Because in the past it would kind of, hurt my ego. I don't know if that's the right way, but it might hurt my feelings, I would say, not ego. But I've kind of reached a point where I have enough confidence in myself that you can have your opinions of me, and they're probably right.
Could I say something that's offensive to you and you not be offended?
Yes,
So
because
could you do something to God that would be offensive, but he wouldn't be offended?
I'm sorry, I kind of missed the first part of that.
So could you do something that was offensive to God and him not be offended?
No, I think if you do something offensive, you're offending. But the thing is if somebody offends me, well, I guess I'd put it this way: if somebody says something to me, they haven't offended me. Like if someone said, you're ugly, you're stupid. Well, I don't go, oh my God, I'm ugly, you're stupid. I have enough confidence that I'm secure with who I am. Now, what they said was offensive, but they're the ones who, was offensive. But I don't receive it that way,
So God being bigger enough to not be offended, but I feel like when Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, was he tempted or did somebody tempt him? Like, was he actually tempted? Like, I don't know if, because somebody on the outside can say, wow, you said some offensive things. If I said something to you that was wrong, somebody can say, wow, you were being really offensive. But if you're not offended by it, that means it's not offensive?
No, I would not say, I don't think that. I'm looking at it as, like the question is, over my lifetime has been, so it's like, I read that as, what have I done that has been offensive to God, right? So if someone else is offensive, that's not me.
Okay, I think we've, these are personal questions, and our conversation is good. It helps stir up things, and so you'll continue to think about this, I'm sure. So let's go on to the second question.
And those are good questions. Yeah, I like that. That's and the rest of you join right in. Okay. What destructive habits need to be identified?
Yes.
And confessed to God?
Yes.
All right. The difficulty I have with this one is, what do I need to confess to God? Now, hey, look, I've always had strong belief in God, but I never went to church. I don't really know the Bible, you know, so there's things that I'm learning. So the way I see God is, He already knows everything I've done.
Which is true.
Yeah, He knows you got a pimple in the crack of your butt. Well, hey, who told him that? He knows everything. So what am I supposed to confess? You know what I'm saying?
Well, what destructive habits is the focus of the question here?
Yes.
What destructive habits? Okay.
And in that sense, now that part I can address, because the destructive habits that I have is, well, there's too many to name, but, one is doing drugs, that does not lead me, I can say, well, hey, I can turn it to good and yada yada, but I would have had more, I would be, further down the road if I didn't do the drugs. I would be a better person if I didn't do the drugs. So they certainly kind of held me back. So, so that's destructive. Another thing that's destructive, for me, is like, I've always wanted, like, how come I don't have there's, no offense to people, but there's some ugly people at Water Gardens that always had women. Like, where the hell's mine? You know what I'm saying? Like, what happened? And so I've always kind of chased something that seems like everybody just gets. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And
that's a destructive habit?
It has been a destructive habit.
Okay.
Because the time that I've kind of spent,
So you're identifying it and confessing it?
Yes.
Okay.
But yes. So I mean, when I see confession, I could be wrong. When I see confession, it's I'm telling someone something they don't know. So I'd be confessing to y'all, but God just knows everything.
But see, our confession, we're telling God what He already knows, but it's about us because we lie to ourselves and we deny the truth. Okay, we try to pretend or fantasize and hide out, and so confession is part of the fact that we're realizing it to the place that we're able to let it come out of our mouth, and for us also to hear it, because that affects us when we hear our own confession.
I wholeheartedly agree. Verbalizing something, I think it
makes it more real.
It sure does. Now I also think
even to God, it makes it more real to you when you say it aloud to God.
I think that if I'm going to address it like this, like we talked about, the person who's on trial for murder, and then he, I did it, like Jeffrey Dahmer. He admits everything. It's like, oh, good, he's a good serial killer. We like that one. Lock him up. So it's, so we, so the confession part, I think, shows others that we see our wrongful conduct.
It's the reverse of lying. Wouldn't you agree with that? We're coming.
Yes.
We're trying to come true with reality.
Yes, and I think people appreciate that. But then of course some people, they just say a bunch of stuff to try to they want to get on parole or what have you.
Yes.
And so you're like, well, he just making that up. He just saying what he needs to say to get himself out, and it's not.
But again, that doesn't produce the healing that we're talking about.
That is correct. Yes.
Let's go to the next question.
Let's go. What blocks and resistances do I have to being honest with God about my wrongdoings? The issue I have with this is, is I don't like sugarcoat anything. I mean, like I don't cheat at solitary. Like why? So I don't lie to God. I mean, why? So I don't think I have any blocks that prevent it. It's not that I'm ashamed of it. Hell, he already knows, And so So I don't think I have blocks or resistance with being honest with God.
Good.
And now, I could be wrong, but I'm just saying, when I'm going through these, I was having those issues, answering those. But we have question 4.
Good. And it's a big one.
And I have a lot of writing on that one. Question 4. What consequences from past wrong choices am I living with today? Oh, hell. Where do I begin? Yeah, so, a whole bunch. I don't know, that big. I don't know. So, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I'm still living with the consequences. Here's one. All right. So I grew up poor. And then when I got out of, school, I was making some money. So I thought what I needed was more expensive shoes, a fancier car, and so, so I was spending more. I think it was to give people an impression. I thought I was giving, I was doing it so they would think more of me or what have you, But it was stupid because here I am broke, and if I didn't spend all that money on that stuff, I had a Jaguar. What a piece of crap. Brand new. In the shop 13 times first year. I spent so much money leasing that thing that to this day I'm like, I can't believe I wasted that. So that's one thing that still sticks with me. So, so the consequences of my wrong conduct, trying to please others, like my siblings, and because I'd give them money, or my brother, one brother, because I think I was trying to buy his affection, and shit, he didn't give a rat's ass, and then when all was said and done, now he doesn't talk to me. Well, hell, anyhow, so it's the consequences, I'm living with the consequences of actions such as trying to please others instead of just, which I think in education really helped me. I think it helps everyone. So go to school. But it really did kind of help me. So the consequences of that, doing the drugs, I'll just do it for a year. If I fall too fast, I'll stop. Hello, it's been more than a year, And see what else. And we're probably out of time. So, he probably doesn't want to say it, but I'll say it for him. He probably wants me to stop talking. Like, has anyone ever wanted me to stop talking? Case in point. Okay.
Hey, I got a question.
Hold applause. No applause, just money, please. Throw money, no applause.
You said that you was using drugs and you didn't think God was offended because he expected it. But if I was to tell someone not to go to a wedding and they went and they was all drunk and high and they acted a fool, should I be offended then? Or should the drugs and the alcohol be an excuse for their behavior? See, my point is, I don't even remember half the stuff I did when I was using. So I really don't know if I offended God or not, but if I stopped and took a look, I'm sure I can find the faults that the Bible says there's no one that was flawed other than him.
Yeah, that's kind of a good point because, I remember somebody saying, boy, you really worked that pole, and then took a little memory recollection and then I was really drunk and there was a stripper pole. And so I'm sure I offended God on that one. Like, oh, hell no, get off that thing, But I would say, yes. Okay, any more questions? Yes, okay. Okay, and with that, thank you very much. Good job, good job.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Just remember that we're all in different places of the process, and we're, those questions, I think I said it a while ago, they're personal questions to help, and we're all different places. They're all speak to us individually, and I know that the first time I went through the questions, I got one thing. The second time was different. The third time was different. Every time is different, okay? Because it's working on us to take out the trash. How about that? Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, and it's Him that does the work, the Holy Spirit I'm speaking. It's Him that does the work. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for your work.
Thank you.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you and give you His peace. And, yes, and make healthy choices.